Hi everyone, welcome to my channel Stalk My Closet. Today I'm sharing cutting of center slit kurti, and for that I'm using this rayon fabric. It has beautiful border at the bottom and this is 2.25 meter of fabric. So let's get started. For cutting, firstly I'll cut the back of the kurti, and for that I have folded the fabric once. And to fold the fabric, I have taken the widest measurement on my kurti, which is its ghera, 30 inch. Half of 30 is 15, and I have added 1 inch for seam allowance. So 15 plus 1 is 16. This is 16 inch wide fabric, and in total this is 32 inch. And now I'll mark all the measurements. Firstly, I'll mark the straight line below the border. Now from the top, I'll mark a point at 6.75 inch. And from this point, I'll go 7 inch downwards and I'll mark the point. This is waist point. Again from waist point, I'll go 7 inch downwards and I'll mark the point. Now I'll extend these points. Now for shoulder, take half of your shoulder measurement. In my measurement, shoulder is 13.5 inch and half of it is 6.75 inch. So I'll mark a point at 6.75 inch. And I'll mark the same point on this line too. Join these points. For neckline, from the center, I'll mark a point at 3 inch. This is neck width. And for shoulder slope, from this point, go half inch downwards and mark the point. Now join these points. From this point, I will take the depth of the neckline, which is 6 inch. Again from this point, I will mark the neck width, which is 3 inch, and I will join these points to form a rectangle. And I'll make the round shape. This is for back neck. Now for bust measurement, I am adding 2 inch of ease. In my measurement, bust is 32 inch. So 32 plus 2 is 34, and dividing it by 4, I'll get 8.5 inch. So I'll mark a point at 8.5 inch. For waist, I'm adding 4 inch of ease. I'm making this kurti A-line and I want it little loose fit, so I'm adding 4 inch of ease. If you want proper fitted kurti, you can add 2 inch of ease to your waist measurement. So in my measurement, waist is 26 inch, 26 plus 4 is 30, and dividing it by 4, I'll get 7.5 inch. So I'll mark a point at 7.5 inch. And for hip measurement, I am adding 5 inch of ease. Again, if you want proper fitted kurti, you can add 2 inch or 3 inch of ease to your measurement. In my measurement, hip is 36 inch. So 36 plus 5 is 41. And dividing it by 4, I'll get 10.25 inch. So I'll mark a point at 10.25 inch. And now I'll join these points. I'm not using curved ruler here because this is already a loose fit kurti, so I don't need curved shape. For bust to waist, I'm using curved ruler. I'm adding 1.5 inch of seam allowance for bust and waist, and 1 inch for hip to bottom. I'll join these points too. And now I'll make the back armhole curve. Now I'll mark the length of the kurti. I'll just keep the measuring tape on the top and I'll mark the length, which is 50 inch. And I have added 1 inch for seam allowance. I'll extend this point. And now I'll mark the ghera measurement, which is 15 inch. And I'll join these points. I have added 1 inch for seam allowance and I'll join these points too. Now from hip point, measure the length till bottom. This is 30 inch. And now measure the same length from this point and mark it. Now I'll join this point with the bottom line. So marking is complete and now I'll cut it. So cutting off the back of the kurti is completed and now I'll cut the front. So again I have folded the fabric for the front of the kurti and I have marked the line on the top. I have also left 1 inch of seam allowance on this side of the kurti, as this is center slit kurti, so we need seam allowance for that. And now I'll place the back. And I'll trace it. And now I'll just mark the shoulder measurement because I need to mark the front armhole curve. Now from this point I'll go 1 inch inwards. I'll join these points. And now I'll make the front armhole curve. For neckline, I'll take neck width from this point and not from the edge. I'll mark 3 inch from this point. And I'll take depth of the front neckline, which is 6.5 inch. And again I'll mark the neck width. And I'll join these points to form a rectangle. You can make any desired neckline shape. I'll cut it on buckram later. So marking is complete and now I'll cut the kurti. So I have cut the kurti and now I'll cut the center. Cutting of my kurti is completed and now I'll cut the sleeves. Now for sleeves, I have folded the fabric twice. And firstly I'll mark the length of my sleeves, which is 17 inch. And I'll add 1 inch for seam allowance. So 17 plus 1 is 18. I'll just extend this point. Now I'll mark the cap height, which is 3.5 inch. And now for armhole length, take 1/4 of your burst measurement and deduct 1 inch from it. Like in my measurement burst is 32 inch. Dividing it by 4, I'll get 8, and 8 minus 1 is 7, so I'll mark a point at 7 inch. I don't have much fabric for seam allowance, but it'll work for me. And now I'll join this point to the top. Now measure this line. This is 8 inch. I need to divide this line into 3 parts. So 8 divided by 3 is 2.6 inch. I'll just take the round figure 2.5 inch and I'll mark it twice on this line. Now from this point I'll go half inch upwards and I'll mark a point. And from this point I'll go 1/4 inch or 0.25 inch downwards and I'll mark a point. Now I'll make the armhole curve. Now for arm fitting, from the top I'll mark a point at 6 inch. At 11.5 inch, this is elbow point. And at the bottom 17 inch. Now I'll extend these points. So at 6 inch arm round is 11 inch and half of it is 5.5 inch. So I'll mark a point at 5.5 inch. At elbow point arm round is 10.5 inch and half of it is 5.25 inch, so I'll mark a point there. And at the bottom arm round is 10 inch, half of it is 5, so I'll mark a point at 5 inch. And now I'll join these points. So this is the marking for sleeves and now I'll cut it. Now I'll take the top 2 layers and I'll cut the front armhole. So this is the cutting for sleeves. With this, cutting of my kurti is completed and I'll share its stitching in my next video. Thanks for watching. Hope you like this video. If you do, please give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe to my channel for more such videos. And I'll see you soon. Till then, take care. Bye bye.